This is Shay Bernhardt, the manager for BrooklynStation.com, King and Queen Radio. Hold it just 1 second. Let me adjust the camera just a tiny bit. Track me, Tiny. Yeah, a little bit more. Hold on a second. There we go. That's much better. How's everybody doing tonight? All right. So normally I'd have music, but I've been chasing down a few things to get the remote camera going, which that's actually pretty much if you would like to be, would you like, if you would like to have your own show, DJ your own show, have your own talk show, we can now do that from a remote camera, which it would be using a third-party app called OBS, which is free. So that's good. I've been working on some of the more advanced features, which for my purposes, I'd really like it to be able to work with, be able to use Ableton Live as well as basically stream from that, which I'm having a little bit of difficulties as far as that goes. That's pretty advanced. Most people won't need that, so we're good to go, which means if you want your own show and you want to be able to do it from the comfort of your own home, we can instruct you on how to set that up so you don't even need to come down into the studio now, which is, I'm pretty excited about that. As of tomorrow, we will be uploading a few of the older shows up onto a video on demand site, which we will be posting the link for that, and that will be for both shows available on that are showing on King and Queen Radio and BrooklynStation.com. So as of tomorrow, we will also be reissuing the second newsletter. I'll be working on that tomorrow. Let's see, what else? We're going to be in the Pride Parade on the 30th, and we're still looking for, I believe, we're still looking for DJs. We're looking for any acts that would like to perform on the float, and then, of course, any sponsors for the float. So let's see, I will, if you are interested, please get a hold of us. You can certainly call us at you can call me, Shay Bernhardt, at 929-694-8741, or you can call the CEO, Zina Palin, at 718-253-7273. And discuss that with us. I also have the email, but my name's kind of hard to spell, so allow me a minute. Before the end of the show, I'll put the email up, so if you're interested in it, you can look at it on the screen and write it down. It makes it a lot easier. So yeah, normally the idea behind this show is, of course, is an audio visual experience, because I mean, like last night's show I DJ'd, but as far as an artist and my own expression musically, I'm not a DJ, I'm a shaman, which is two different things. Basically, a DJ plays music that people are familiar with and they like to shake their butt to. A shaman plays music to create a specific state of mind and a specific state of consciousness. It's two different things, right? So, being able to DJ, of course, expands my understanding of playing to an audience, whereas, this show is more geared towards using my experimentation into solfeggio, which is your sacred frequencies, which harkens all the way back to Egypt, most likely all the way back to Samaria, because I mean everything harkens back to Samaria, which of course goes back to, as episode 2 we discussed, Arata, which was an empire formed 43,000 years ago. So basically, I didn't have quite as much time to prepare for this show because I was bound and determined to get the remote capabilities up. It's nice to know that they're up, and eventually I'll figure out how to do some of the things that I have in mind for the station. Which one of them is the ability for people to jam in real time from different locations so that you could actually get live music from people in different parts of the world. And that's basically that's where my audio problems are. And that's, like I say, that's fairly advanced. For most people, they're not going to need that kind of functionality. That's just eventually where I'd like to see the station go, because there's a lot of musicians out there, and I've spent the past 5 years doing a lot of improvised jams with musicians from all over the world, and it's fabulous. We've produced some beautiful music. Unfortunately, the medium that I was using to do that decided to quit what they were doing, and the servers went down at the start of this month, which wiped out probably about 2,000 songs that I had stored on their servers. Still kind of sad about that, but it is what it is, and creativity is not a finite resource, so it's like there's plenty more where that came from, and if I could come up with that much, then I can certainly come up with more. Let's see, what else do we got going on? Let's see, we've of course upgraded the video, as you can tell, and we're going to continue to work on improving the quality of our services. We've definitely reduced the what do we got going on here? We definitely reduced the signal to noise ratio. And hold on just one second. Let's see what's going on here. There we go. All right, yeah, some dead air there. Yeah, like I say, it's been an ongoing thing with audio. Audio is getting complicated these days, to say the least. It's amazing how much variety they have these days when you're trying to find software to solve a problem. And I mean, variety gets kind of overwhelming. It's one of the things I found as a musician is, like, I didn't start finishing songs until I got to the point where I actually seriously reduced the amount of software I was using to make the music. And then it's like once I reduced down to a few plugins, and that's about it, for right now, and started focusing on getting to learn those pretty well, I've actually started completing music. Fact is, I will have some stuff some new releases pretty soon. Quite a few of them, actually. I'm currently learning, since we're starting to branch off more into focusing on a little bit of video and stuff. I've been working on learning that, and that's an entirely new aspect. So, but it's interesting. I firmly believe we're here to build character. All my studies into your esoteric and your esoteric texts, your higher sciences have done nothing but reinforce my belief that we're here to build character, because once you pass away, it's the only real thing that really goes with you. And it's like one thing I'm glad of throughout my path is I know firmly that reincarnation is a fact. I don't go through any questioning of my faith, because my faith is based on a lot of research into facts, and there's a lot of facts that support the esoteric sciences. I call them higher sciences because that's really all they are. I mean, when you basically speak of the ladder of consciousness. Itzhak Bentov actually is the best one to go to for that kind of a real simple explanation, because his book is Stalking the Wild Pendulum is fairly short, but very, very concise as far as the nature of reality goes. And it was written in let's see, he died in, I think it was 1979, actually the Gateway program, which they were using his science in the Gateway program, which if you remember correctly from episode 3, we discussed that, which was the CIA's psychic warfare program. They were basically using resonant frequency and hemispherical synchronization. In other words, they were using sound frequency and hypnotic suggestion to create out-of-body experiences, and they were taking these people and giving them coordinates to go and spy. Now, now people will say that they had kind of a mixed bag of results, which when it comes to something metaphysical like that, and our limited understanding of the higher sciences, mixed results are kind of to be expected. It's like basically one of the things that make it really difficult for us to evolve spiritually at this point is because it's like since about 400 BC, it's shifted away from. I mean, it used to be considered a scientist. Not only did you have to understand basically the empirical world, which is the world of the physical and provable, but you also had to understand the metaphysical or esoteric sciences. Basically what that means is you had to understand both the physical and metaphysical, the realm of the material and the realm of the spirit, in order to be considered a scientist. Later on, they switched that term to alchemist, right, to cast that occult, hoodoo on it, and make it, and basically what would be the word, invalidate the learnings and teachings of these people. But the truth of the matter is that we don't live in an empirical reality, because I mean it's a proven fact that our understanding and our ability to perceive the reality around us is pretty limited compared to the amount of it that exists. Take, for example, our range of hearing, or take, for example, the spectrum in which our vision is. I mean, it's like we see in a narrow spectrum, we hear in a narrow spectrum, and yet we're so arrogant we think we actually know everything. It's pretty funny because I mean, it basically, as near as I can tell from my research, is a 5-year-old child knew more about the realm of spirit back 10, 15,000 years ago than the entirety of the world today. It seemed like, because I mean, we used to really understand a lot about the realm of the spirit, and now we don't. And now I've taken and explained to you basically the strategies that certain unscrupulous characters that have a lot of power and influence have been using in the United States of America, and in the other civilized worlds, to basically diminish us and create a two-class system, which would be the masters and the slaves, because the powers that be never have gotten over having to let their slaves go. Um, and again, we of course, this is kind of to remind y'all. Again, of course, we went through the fact that their machinations really amount to nothing so long as we keep focused on what we're here for. Unfortunately, it's like the campaign of disinformation has been going on for quite some time, and it's made it so it's really difficult these days to navigate through like all the different. It's really difficult to find some type of direction in today's world. There's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of focus on the material, on the material things. I mean, commercialism is at an all-time high. And I mean, people are seeking outside of themselves for something that is really a longing that's deep within. And so long as we're focused on seeking outside of ourselves for a solution that lies within ourselves, then we're not going to find the solution because we're looking in the wrong direction. I say we because I've certainly been through that, and I mean, I still struggle a lot with different things, because I mean, I stand on a slippery slope right now as far as my understanding of sound, light, and symbolism and the way they work together, as well as my studies into your sacred frequencies, your cymatic frequencies, and your hemispherical sync, which I mean, once you start getting into the theta frequencies, and bypassing the filter of the logical side of your brain, then it's like that starts getting into the realm of hypnotic suggestion. Now, basically, I'm figuring if me, with my level of ignorance, can start figuring out how to use sound frequency to plant hypnotic suggestion, then that means the people that are pushing out all this media that people are subjected to 24/7 these days also understand that, and probably to a much greater degree because they have all the resources in the world at their disposal, and those resources have been focused for 2600 years now, 2624 years now that I know of. Those resources have been dedicated to basically diminishing our capacity as spiritual beings, leading us further into hell and further away from God, because the original description of hell was an absence of God. Now, this episode, I was going to discuss the Anunnaki that are spoken of quite prolifically in our ancient records, and that includes also they are spoken of in the Bible, but just by different words, different names, because at Babel they did something that confused our languages, and I still think, I mean, according to the Sumerian histories, we were created through genetic manipulation and gene splicing. So that's probably some similar to what they did to change the language. It's really hard to tell there, because that's basically when the campaign to make us ignorant started. And I mean, it's been going for a long time. I'm reading one of the books I'm reading right now, and I think I'm only reading about 10 right now, and one of them is a Pondulous tome, to say the least, entitled The Secret Doctrine. And it was written by H.P. Blavatsky back in something like 1888, and has been in print this whole time. And I mean, it doesn't really have anything in there that I personally don't already know to be true so far. It's very ponderous and convoluted reading, and that's because it's got a lot of jargon in it, and I can't stand jargon myself because it really interferes with the ability to understand. And a lot of times Blavatsky speaks of protecting this information from the profane, but it's when we allowed people to start destroying information that the concept of the profane came about. Before that, everybody shared information freely because they had nothing to fear from the sharing of information. It was once something, basically once they decided to start restricting information is when basically it became an issue, because I mean, you think about it, they gathered information for hundreds of years at the Library of Alexandria, and that just vanished. Now there's some that say it got destroyed by I forget the name of the Islamic conqueror. He was a general, and supposedly his famous statement was that if it agreed with the Quran, then it was redundant, and if it didn't, then it was blasphemy. So that everything was destroyed. But I beg to differ. I think that what that is a disinformation campaign, because it's also, by doing that, it's the beginning of process that you can trace throughout history of driving wedges between us so that we cannot basically get along, and that started at Babel. I mean, specifically, I mean, the Bible is kind of vague on it. The Sumerians go into a lot more detail, and that's one of the reasons why I want to take you through some of the Sumerian histories and take you through some of the direct readings of some translations of them, is because where the Bible had a tendency to be brief in certain circumstances, the Sumerian histories tend to be very explicit and very specific and very detailed. They were a very detailed people, and they were meticulous in their record keeping. It's interesting to note that one of the documents is basically a list of kings, and I mean, it's like this list of kings is very accurate from a certain point. There's a point basically where we can cross-reference, and the list of kings is pretty accurate. But there's this line where, it gets to be a little bit outside of our normal range of experience, and it's like we've allowed them to really limit our capacity to grasp experiences beyond the material, which is a pity because the material realm is basically the kiddie pool as far as the spiritual realm goes. This is to we're here to gain basically a sense of incorruptibility. And the reason for that is because there's basically a certain level of responsibility that comes with the power that we gain once we step out of this particular arena and into the higher realms of consciousness. And that power is spoken of in the Bible. It's spoken of in the Quran. It's spoken of by all faiths, because all faiths stem from the same place. And this is one of the things I'm going to illustrate over the period of this show, among other things. And it's like basically there was a point before 400 BC where nobody questioned the existence of reincarnation. It is like a lot of times people misnomer the concept of the underworld, and it was called, the Sumerians called it the Abzu, something like that. And archaeologists and translators would call this the underworld, or the land of the dead, and they speak of that with the Egyptians as well, and the Egyptians also believed in reincarnation, so I mean, logically speaking, if you believe in incarnation, then the land of the dead doesn't exist. That's absurd, because there's no such thing as death. So, it's like, and this is one of the reasons why when I study the Sumerian histories, I go to Sitchin, because, it's like he's one of the ones that clearly understands that, and, his explanation for the term Absu, or the underworld, makes sense, because according to the Sumerian histories, basically you had two different realms. You had Eden and you had Abzu. Now, basically, if you get into the Lost Book of Enki and take Sitchin's translations for what they're worth, I mean, it's a difficult job to translate ancient writing, because it's like they used symbolism and pictures. And for some reason, we have this mindset where, like, we see that as a primitive style of writing. But I mean, how many people have heard a picture is worth 1,000 words? Well, there's basically a reason why they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I mean, theoretically speaking, as far as the way the mind works, and as a means of communication, pictorial writing communicates a whole lot more in a lot less wordy manner. It's a far more intuitive manner of communication. So, it's like we got a letter for every syllable and a word for everything, and it's like they thought, which points out that basically our ancestors definitely thought on a different level than we did, if they could look at those pictures and get the whole story out of it. So it's like, for example, the Egyptians have their collection of scrolls and writings that is misnomered the Book of the Dead. Now, it's like when I found a translation to study that particular belief system, it's like I went to a translator that didn't even call it the Book of the Dead. She called it I can't even. I'll put it up in the. There's another thing. Soon I'm gonna put basically a suggested reading and such. Basically a list of where I've gotten my information. So those that would like to learn for themselves and dig deeper in, will be able to do so. I also will provide a link for archive.org, which, if you're not familiar with the archive.org, it's a nonprofit organization that's geared towards preserving knowledge. You can actually, it's a great research resource because they got a lot of your original microfishes uploaded. If a website gets taken down, they got the Wayback Machine where you can go back to like a snapshot of the website and stuff like that. So, and I mean, it's got a lot of old grimoires on there, yay, and it's got basically has a lot of your older original copies of stuff that, is like you'd have to dig pretty deep to find it anywhere else. So that's one of the resources that I use quite often in my researches, and I'm glad it's there. So archive.org, if you want to do research, and especially with the reading list when I do post it. And I'm sorry it takes me this long to get to it. Needless to say, I'm spread a little bit thin right now, but it's like pretty soon we'll have everything on this station up and running. So it's basically it doesn't need the constant oversight anymore, and I can start focusing on adding a little bit of excitement and thrills. Along that lines, I'm gonna go for myself shift towards a pre-recorded show same time on Tuesday nights, simply because it'll allow me to spend less time trying to get things to play nice together and just take stuff that I know plays nice together and already works together, put together a show and play it for you all, because that works much better for me personally, and it allows me to produce a much higher quality entertainment for you guys. Um, so yeah. Anyway, we're about to. Oh yeah, the Sumerian history. So basically, we'll go over the beginning, and this is the creationism, and then next week we're going to go into more specifics, and I'm going to show you a couple. I'm going to take and show you some specific verses, especially the ones on the gene splicing part, just so you can get a taste of it precisely, what these people were saying, because I mean, it's like you don't really get exposed to the Sumerian histories per se throughout your daily wandering around, and yet, it's like they're very, as I say, they were very meticulous in their recording of what's going on, and that list of kings. I mean, they follow it all the way up to the point where the reigns of the kings, basically to the reigns of the kings, become more than the lifetime of a normal human. And that's because, it's like basically of course I can show you a list, and I will put this up on the reading list, so that people can actually look at the list of the organizations that are actively involved in diminishing us, and that includes basically all the heads of your higher education. So I mean, they're trying to keep us from going back further than their control of the information. And and I believe it was the last episode and the episode before, I spoke of secret organizations and the fact that they existed purely because it was necessary, because it was the only way they could preserve this information, It's like things like your Templars and your right now. I mean, everybody. There's all kinds of conspiracy theories on the Masonic lodges, but those conspiracy theories are coming from people that really don't understand. So it's like they're basically just going on hearsay. Now, what looking into the Sumerian histories does is, once you start to see the parallels between those and the teachings of all the other faiths of the world, I mean, it's like the Sumerian histories speak of the Mesoamerican world and their history, And it's like the archaeological evidence that's coming up right now and is fully in support of these histories. But it's the information is lost in the deluge of BS that the governments are putting online with their AI farms that create disinformation, and I mean, one thing to keep in mind, and it's like that's what my intro is all about, and I'm kind of disappointed that I wasn't able to play that for you all today, but as I say, I'm bound and determined to get everything up and working, so I spent a little bit too much time, and my audio interface actually ended up hitting the floor at something like 60 miles per hour to give you an idea of the level of frustration. um, but anyway, where was I? Oh, so basically, we're not somewhere around 400 BC is basically when the Sumerian, the Book of Enki ends, and the Book of Enki is supposedly one that was directly related to a scribe from Enki himself, which Enki is. He's one of the original people. There was one Anunnaki that supposedly had been king, and his cupbearer Anu, which later became the list of names. We'll discuss the genealogy here next week because that gets kind of convoluted. But it is actually kind of important because it is the thing that people don't realize, even the ones that study this, is that this is going on today. It ties very much into the first episode because the group that I was speaking of is the group that stayed when the Anunnaki that could leave went back to their home planet the last time it passed in 400 BC. All right. So now, why should you believe the Sumerian histories? I mean, after all, the official story of scientists is that Sumeria just popped out of nowhere. That it's like they used slaves to drag these megalithic rocks all over the place and build these giant pyramids that are perfectly formed using stone tools because Egypt was like during the stone and the bronze age. I mean, the hardest tool that the Egyptians had was bronze. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's patently ridiculous to say that these cultures were able to use stone and bronze tools to do the work on these megaliths, and that goes for every site. As a matter of fact, and that brings us back to the Abzu and the Eden. All right, so basically, when they decided that when they first got here, it was to attempt to get gold to basically save the atmosphere of their planet because their planet is on a 3,600-year orbit, and it maintains its heat due to the atmosphere around it. And basically there was a hole developing in that atmosphere. Now that sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? The more things change, the more they stay the same. So basically, they needed gold to put up in the atmosphere so it could create an envelope that would store the heat of the volcanic activity on their planet that created the conditions necessary to live. Now, see, that right, even that right there is, I mean, for what we are taught about the ancestors, that's a pretty sophisticated idea for people that supposedly didn't, saw somebody come down and believe they were gods and stuff. So, yeah, our ancestors were every bit as intelligent as we are, folks, if not more so. I mean, they were certainly more connected to what was really going on around them than we are, because we're so distracted by BS, and I mean, most of what's going on around us is BS. I mean, marketing, it's like every year every what is it now? Every 3-4 months they come out with a new phone, every 6 months at the most. But if you look up the chipsets, which is basically the brain, the actual the actual guts of the phone, they haven't changed in years. So basically, all they're doing is selling you the same thing repackaged for more money, and that's marketing. And but it's like the more people focus on, well, I got the iPhone 14, I need the 15 because it's got an extra camera, the less that person is focused upon. It's like I need to understand who I am, face myself, clean my karma up, and move on. You see, and so basically, the more we focus upon things like diamonds, iPhones, and PlayStations, the less we focus upon, moving on and going to better things. Now, I'm a little uncertain, and this is kind of where it gets a little gray, because after when the Anunnaki left, they couldn't all leave. The ones that had been here, like Enki, Marduk, and Nana, which Nana plays a key part in this, and we'll go into that in a little bit. I'm gonna have to take it. I'm gonna have to take and introduce you to that particular one, but. There is a story in the histories discussing where Inanna basically seduced Enki, which was the guy that came here and was in control of the Absu, which is mistranslated as the underworld, but which actually was Africa. All right, so and another interesting thing is because the Sumerians were called the black-headed people, and one of the reasons for that is back in the day you had to keep your head shaved so you didn't get lice, because they didn't have lice remover, right? But not only that, but it's like, basically speaking, it turns out Adam was black. I hate to say it to anybody that is racist. You're probably focused on the wrong thing, because Adam was black. And that's basically, I believe the Sumerian history is pretty well, because I've dug into enough of them to understand that it's like they're all other religions stem from these histories. All other faiths are teaching what these histories speak of, and they're just using different. Basically, from Babel on, due to the confusion of the tongues, each culture had a different way of relating to these events. But they're all describing the same events, some in a much briefer fashion, say, for example, the Bible. And yet, and here's the thing, and like, there's portions of Genesis and portions of the Sumerian histories that are word for word almost, so it's like the Bible came from the Sumerian histories. So it's like, basically, I'm not negating anything I teach. Does not negate any faith. As a matter of fact, the Anunnaki themselves, the Nibirians, believed in the higher power. They believed in the divinity. Now, I don't give the divinity a name, because the divinity quite simply cannot be trapped by the word, and the power of the word in this realm, in this reality, is all powerful. And that, of course, brings us back to why we are here, because this is more or less a coming of age or a rite of initiation. The way to pass the rite of initiation is you have to be ready to take on the power of the word, and then if you have the power of the word, thought becomes manifest. And in order to have such significant power, you have to demonstrate that you have the level of incorruptibility necessary in order to take the responsibility of that power, because with great power becomes great responsibility. Now, karma is an interesting thing, and here in the West, the people don't really understand karma well. So I want to try to kind of, it's kind of hard to put it into words, but basically, we don't have to fear judgment. There's no divine judgment involved. It's just karma. Now, karma is a combination of basically spirit and intent. So more or less what it boils down to is it's almost like a tally system. It's not you do good things and good things come to you. What it is it's the energy that you choose to take in, as well as the energy that you choose to put out. And once you start raising up in your level of understanding, and start getting into the point where you can actually consciously control or basically consciously take in and convert that energy. You can do things like take negative energy in and push positive energy out. But that takes a certain that gives you a certain amount of power due to the law of attraction. Energy, an electrical current creates basically a magnetic field. Now, this magnetic field generally tends to be in the shape of rhombus, I believe the word is, and that more or less is the shape of an egg. So that's where the whole cosmic universal egg thing comes from. Now, interestingly enough, your Hermetic belief, which is a very beautiful faith as well. In Hermeticism, they came up with the saying, and it goes back quite a ways. It's the principle as above, so below. Now that's only half of the concept though, because as below, so above. And right now the ramifications of that particular concept and principle are kind of, I'm spending some time contemplating that, most definitely, because right now as below right here things are kind of messed up. So I'm wondering how far up does that extend. Certainly, I would be cautious if you're doing out of body experiences right now in certain areas, because it's like the realm you go to immediately after this is basically a crossroads, and that's what they call the astral realm. I call it a crossroads because it's basically when you leave this earth, or this realm of existence, you go to the crossroads. Now, the crossroads is basically designed to either encourage you to move on to where you got to go next, or reincarnate as quick as possible. The reason for that is because it prevents the disjointing of experience. Because you carry your character with you each time you come back to this wheel. But if too much time goes past, then you lose continuity in basically what you're here to learn, and that produces its own difficulties. So the next realm is designed to basically encourage you to do what you got to do and get moving. Either come back or move on. But again, human beings in our arrogance, we seem to think that in this entire universe we're the only people, and that's there's a lot of different entities and different parties going through the astral realm at any given point in time. There's a lot of activity going on around us that we're just not able to perceive, and so. It's a little bit dangerous. From what I gather, death is when you die. Life is eternal, but you still got to kind of navigate a gauntlet there, because there's so many different personalities and so many different entities traveling through the crossroads there. That it's like when you die, it's like getting dropped in a bad neighborhood in the middle of the night with a backpack full of hundreds on your back. If you're not mentally prepared, you could get, you're still on the food chain. Let's put it this way, because there's been a few documents out there that people have come up with that, they are. The people that wrote them obviously have a pretty good level of understanding, and that makes me kind of pay attention to what they're speaking about and give it a little bit of credence. So there's basically reliable people out there that speak of the astral plane, and it's pretty busy. Right now I'm not leaving my body because I'm in New York, and I know the entity that has basically dominion over this area, and I don't really want to be vulnerable to that particular entity. Eventually, when I can get out of the city and a little bit out of the direct sphere of influence, possibly if I can get up to my sweat lodge there in central New York, then I will leave my body. But the nice thing is you don't really have to leave your body. Just like it used to be, in order to be a scientist, you had to know both the physical and metaphysical sciences. But at the same time, like my studies and research, I mean, I've been to university, calculus, economics, electrical theory, uh, umpteen spiritual studies, music school. Let's see, yeah, good Lord, psychological. I've been through every educational opportunity that I've come across in my travels, which is quite a few. Um, the only two that I didn't learn, because after calculus I was pretty much mathed out, because calculus, God. And you can't even imagine what it's like trying to pass the economics 1 and 2 without taking calculus. I think I've said this before, but I will say it again. If you go into anything that involves economics, take calculus first, because it's like excruciatingly difficult to pass economics without knowing calculus. And I found that out. The economics are the 2 B's I got, and calculus was the C I got. Everything else is throughout university was an A. So, yeah. But I didn't take chemistry and physics, so that kind of leaves me out on being a scientist. But again, you don't need to know the math in order to grow and evolve spiritually, which is a good thing, because it's like I can't remember calculus, so much for going and learning physics. Woo! Calculus was bad enough, I mean, I remember I'd be working like 12, 13 hours, and then I'd get off work and I'd be like, oh man, I only got 3 calculus problems. And then you look at the first problem and it's talking about somebody threw a rubber ball at a ladder and it hit the ladder, and how fast was the ball going after it hit the ladder? Which direction was it going, and how fast was the ladder moving in the middle of its fall? And you're like, oh, dude, that's like 6 pages of problems. And so that was calculus. I started out wanting an A. I finished out just glad I passed. But that's neither here nor there. The point being that, it's like, I do have the necessary education to be considered an academic, and that's that was a heck of an achievement, really, considering I've been to prison 3 times, grew up in the hood. I still live in. I've over the past 20 years, I've wandered from one side of the country to the other, and lived in some pretty gnarly hoods, and I don't have to, but I do, because it's like in a lot of these inner city neighborhoods, between the crack war, the opium epidemic, the gang wars, it's the leadership has been wiped out, and it's like people without leaders is a people without vision, and without vision, it's like, what do you have? You'll remember last week I discussed basically a set of principles that allow a person to take control of their karma, such as it is. Karma is not something that you can consciously grab a hold of and manipulate. But at the same time, it operates as all things in the higher sciences operate. All things that have to do with the realm of spirit are science. It's just science we don't understand yet. So they all have this set of principles and laws that they follow, just like just like electrical theory, hydraulic theory, stuff like that. Now the laws that they follow are a little bit different than what we, at this point in time, in our understanding, most of us aren't really able to grasp, because we are in an age where the materialistic and the empirical determine what our reality is, rather than personal experience and intuition. and which is a pity, one of the things that separates the man from the animals, and as a matter of fact, it also separates mankind from the Anunnaki, because the Anunnaki are not particularly imaginative. They have very superior technology, and that technology is originally was very natural. It became a lot more mechanical as time went by, and we'll get into that when we go more in depth into their gene splicing stories, because that does get quite detailed, and it's shockingly so, actually. But meanwhile, we go to the timeline. All right, so basically, we're talking about 400 BC, which is a point where Nibiru passed by, and everybody, there was a lot of activity, basically because everybody thought that the Anunnaki would be coming. There would be a state visit by the head of the Anunnaki planet, the king Anu, and I forget the etymology of like all the different names for him. It's kind of hard to keep track of all the different names for the same people they got, but Anu, basically, as I say, he was the king of the Anunnaki, and he did a state visit in 4000 BC. So when the next time they passed around, everybody thought that it would be another state visit. But see, that was also shortly after Sumeria had been wiped out by being involved in the wars of gods and men, as Sitchin put it, and it's kind of where we're gonna end up spending a little bit of time is looking at the way the stories speak of the evolution of the Anunnaki and compare them to our own evolution now, because there's a lot of similarities between basically them and us. And there's good reason for that, which the Sumerian histories go into, very specific on the gene splicing, very specific and detailed. And there's another section that we're going to discuss that has a pretty accurate description of using a flash drive on a computer. Yeah, it's just pretty crazy. Unfortunately, like I say, I'm bound and determined to get remote capabilities up and running, including being able to use a digital audio workstation from a remote position, so that if a person wants to be able to do music live and in real time, perform a live musical event through a DAW, they can do it through our station. So I'm bound and determined to make that happen, and it's going to happen, because it's basically, once I set my mind to something, it happens. But I'm also, like I say, I'm gonna start pre-recording my shows, and I think what I'm gonna do is as we move forward, I'm gonna take and go back to the first couple ones and redo them with the higher quality video, the new camera, and a little bit better audio and stuff, and we'll make them available on the video on demand. Now, the video on demand will be available. I'm going to start uploading episodes tomorrow. So, like I say, we'll be getting the links out on that, and I will also be placing the links to access that in our newsletter, which will be going out tomorrow. I was hoping in the morning, but it looked like it'd be going in the evening. So keep your eyes open for that, and we're going to schedule that regularly here relatively soon. It's another one of the things I'm working on, is making it so that we can have a much closer interaction with you, our listeners, which is, of course, again, ties into why I want advanced functionality as far as the streaming goes, is because it's like I'd really like to interact more with the listener, and allow listeners to interact with us more. And I know it's possible these days. It's like trying to get different platforms and all your different software to play together nicely these days. I've heard somebody say that it's like trying to teach a super smart cat a new trick. And I'm here to tell you, brothers and sisters, that's precisely what it's like these days working with audio and video. And it could be what I'm running into is it could be because my computers are probably like Swiss cheese because I tend to manipulate and hack and code and do all kinds of crazy stuff with it. And I mean, what's a computer for if you can't hack it, right? So you're listening to brooklynstation.com, and don't forget to listen to kingandqueenradio.com, where we have 24/7 music, and that's a lot of Afro-Cuban. There's people that listen to it all over the world, so it's like that we appreciate that. brooklynstation.com, we're going to be changing the format on that a little bit so that it's more basically it's definitely we're going to focus since it is Brooklyn Station, we're going to focus on Brooklyn and New York City a lot. We're wanting to basically get involved in the community for that more and be focused more on talk shows and stuff. Like my show is basically talk and it uses video and music, but we're primarily during the week on Brooklyn Station going to be focused towards people with a positive message to say. So you pretty much get a feeling of my stance towards anything that involves dividing us as people, because it's like we're all in this together. We're facing some challenging times coming up ahead, and we can't do that divided. I walked away from it. I could be making a lot of money right now in my trade, but instead I'm sitting here talking to you folks because, that's how important I think eliminating division is that I'm willing to sit here and speak of my path in the hopes that it'll help people see that the divisions that we have been created between all of us are a mere illusion and have no significance whatsoever. Once we step out of these bodies, we're all the same. And as far as the significance of what goes on here, this realm is nothing more than it's just a initiation rite. It's designed to teach us to know ourselves well enough, to believe in ourselves well enough, and to basically develop the level of maturity necessary to step into the adult side of the spiritual realms. So and it's, I don't know, to me that message is a lot more important than anything I can buy with money, because I've achieved most of the goals I've had in life to some degree or another, and it's like basically that kind of is what made it so I started turning to self-reflection, because it's like you'll see it a lot. I don't know if anybody's old enough to remember the VH1 series they used to have back in the day called Where Are They Now? And I found it kind of interesting because, and I mean, you can't take me anywhere. I don't take everything to a spiritual level. It's just where I am at. And, you move towards and become like that, which you think about. And what I think about most of the time is how to get the hell away from this place. How to graduate. Because it's like from what I gather, there's some pretty wild things going on once you get off this realm of existence, and I'd like to go check them out personally. So I'm focused primarily on the realm of the spirit for the simple fact that I know that you move towards and become like that which you think about. And you'll find that most people that have any level of spirituality that you would want are the same way. Their focus is upon the spiritual. And that's not to say their focus is on quoting scripture, because you notice I don't necessarily quote scripture because that's not really spirituality. That's indoctrination. It's the spirituality is developing that personal connection with a higher power, and a lot of people are replacing indoctrination and dogma for a real connection, and you can tell because it's like it's they still have the void driving them, so they're still focused. As long as the void is felt and driving you, it means that you're basically still searching, and if you're still searching and you're looking outside of yourself, you're not going to find it. And again, we are in a culture that focuses you that teaches you to focus on what? Everything outside of yourself, and that just leads us further and further. And I'm done playing that game. So it's like my needs these days are pretty simple, and it's like that makes life a lot simpler. Sometimes I feel like it's like, you ever see those movies, where like one person is like kind of standing there and they're going about their business, but everybody else is moving so much quicker. Kind of like that. I mean, everybody's rushing around in these endless circles around me, and it's like they're chasing their own tails. It's kind of like what I'm doing, trying to figure out how to make my system work and play nice with this system. It's like this circle jerk, and it's like they're not getting anywhere. But I mean, I guess it's up to each individual eventually. That there's if you read, if you listen to, read, or speak with any of your people that have found peace in their life and have a pretty good understanding of their place in the world around them. They're most of them are the same way. They're very simple. You'll never see a person that's truly enlightened wearing a bunch of gold jewelry, because that stuff just doesn't mean anything to them. Gold meant something to the Anunnaki because the Anunnaki needed gold to save their species. That's where the value of it comes from. Other than for electronic purposes, it's really useless junk. It has no intrinsic value, other than if you need it for electronics, or in their case, they needed it to basically produce a shield in their atmosphere to keep their atmosphere from depleting. Which, if you have a 3,600-year orbit, that would be a significant concern. Now, basically, as the Sumerian list of kings goes back, oh man, I'm trying to remember here. I know it goes back as far as the Sumerian histories go back, something like 500,000 years, give or take. I think it's about 450 something thousand years is how far their histories go back, and that's when they're basically supposed to have come here first. Now, the flood, it talks about that as well, and Enlil, which was the guy that was in charge with Eden, and Enki and Enlil were like very different in their approaches, especially to the human race, because Enlil wasn't really all that into the whole gene splicing thing in the first place, and then I mean they went through this period of time that it speaks of where it's like the experiments were coming up with a lot of mutations because they had a couple trial and error periods they had to go through, and it speaks very explicitly of this trial and error period and what they had to come up with in order to solve the problem, which basically boiled down to they spliced the genes. They would put it in the womb they would basically mix their genes with their genome with ours. And then they would mix it they would implant it via artificial insemination into the womb of a human female, and the human females kept on having mutants. And so eventually they decided to plant this artificially inseminate a Anunnaki female, and that is when they first had one that was close enough to almost close enough to become the slave that they were looking for. Although originally they weren't seeing us as slaves, and that's one of the things that the Sumerian histories really show is during this 500,000 years, these people changed. and not for the better. And I mean, it seems to originate more. I mean, the ones that had grown up on Nibiru and came here originally, kind of stuck with their principles. You know, I mean, Enlil's argument with the human race wasn't necessarily with the human race so much with the whole program to begin with. You know, I mean, his arguments were along the lines of it's not unethical for us to create a human slave. Whereas, you know, Enki's argument was, you know, that it's not gonna be slaves. We're gonna be partners. They're gonna do the labor, and we'll take care of them. And you know, it's like that basically went on for quite some time. And then there's a point where they started using us in their political conflicts, due to some succession issues and some machinations of Inanna is one of them. And like I say, we're gonna go a little in depth into Inanna here relatively soon, because she's one of the ones that, I mean, she was born pretty early. She's one of the ones that didn't leave. Marduk is also one of the ones that didn't leave, but you know, there is a scrap of document that's rather ancient that speaks of Marduk being found dead. So now what the Bible speaks of when they speak of the Anunnaki is they call them Elohim, or you know, the disembodied spirits of these beings they call the Raphael, I believe the word is. And basically, the Bible also speaks of the war with giants. You know, there's quite a few references to conflicts with giants in both the Bible and all your other, you know, all your cultures speak of this conflict with these giants. You know, and they have I forget the guy's name, because I haven't had a chance to really, I haven't had the time to watch it. He's got like a 3 hour speech he gives for Megalith UK that speaks of his explorations down in Africa. Now, interestingly enough, I mean, you know, you don't really hear a lot about megalithic structures in Africa. You know, I mean, it's certainly North Africa towards the Mediterranean and all that, and in the cradle of civilization, yes. Down there in South Africa, not so much. But you know, this guy, he actually he was showing some of the megalithic structures that do exist there, and they have something like, I believe he said they counted something like over 10 million different sites of these structures and these sites where, I mean, it's like if you look at them, they're not squared off type of constructions. They're very fluid, very roundish, and they're connected by these tunnels. And basically, as far as they can tell, what it was a giant food production. You can't even call it a facility. It was just basically just a giant thing, a giant series of structures connected by tunnels that existed to produce food that would be distributed. And needless to say, you don't really hear much about them, and there's not much left of them. And you know, the Sumerian histories talk of this. And you know, one of the things he found while he was doing excavations on this is he found giant moans, a lot of them. And I mean, it's funny because he was talking about, it's like he's holding up this heart that had been buried in mud until it crystallized, and it was like it's something like 4 times as big as a human heart, you know. And he was saying that while he was holding it up for somebody to take a picture of it, he had somebody pulled up that had seen that knew him and wanted to talk to him, you know, about his work. And it was a heart surgeon, and the first thing he said when he saw what the guy was holding in his hand is, "Hey, that's a heart." So, you know, and that heart comes from a giant. And as a matter of fact, when it's like once he realized that what he was looking at is is fossilized giant bones, it's like it's like it showed a picture, and this was like about 20. I only had a chance to watch about 20 minutes of it, but he had a picture of. I mean, he had so many bones. Oh man, it's crazy, and so in the it's like even the story of David and Goliath. The story of David and Goliath is the story of a human being taking down a giant. And that's it's like some of the translations, and this is the difficulty we run into with the Bible, is because most of your Bible translations that are running around these days came from a Greek translation of the original Hebrew script, and that's called the Septuagint, something like that. And that is, and it's like when you get people that basically go beyond the Greek translation and start digging into the original Hebrew translations, what you find is that the scribes that translated the Greek translation to the Hebrew to the Greek translation were a little lazy in their transcribing. They were a tad bit inaccurate, and that produces a lot of confusion. And now, see, I have kind of an opinion on the whole establishment of the church, because a lot of what was officially allowed to be Canaan kind of points in a different direction. And I don't think that the fault of that is in the Canaan, the teachings necessarily, so much as in who compiled the book in the first place. Again, that's something that you have to really understand history to really grasp, because it's not enough to really just look at the direct translation of, well, this means this. One of the things that you have to take into account when looking at something that was written thousands of years ago is the mindset and of the culture that produced the work. And it's like, so it's like once you start doing that, the scriptures come a little bit more alive, because it's like you can kind of relate to how it was perceived, and perception is everything in this reality. So now the importance, because I know we got worldwide listeners, but we have quite a few listeners in America. And America is basically ground zero for creating a subpar education that will produce a two-class system. So this is basically, it was isolated enough from the rest of the world that they were able to more easily start implementing the indoctrination here than they would be per se somewhere where people from different cultures actually intermingle regularly and go back to, and it's just easier because of we've had that isolationist mindset, I mean, and it's just like, basically there's a point where it becomes it's basically, there's a king that was called Gilgamesh, right? And he's on the king's list, and he's also in a Sumerian history. And it talks about basically he was the hybrid. He was a child of an Earthling and an Anunnaki, or a Nibirian. But he wanted to have the long life that the Nibirians have, rather than the limited lifespan that those of us on this planet have, And so he went on a quest, and that quest basically, it gets pretty intricate, and that quest was for, of course, immortality. And I think that's basically that's pretty significant and ties into current events. It's hard to prove because there's a lot going on that we're not aware of, right? But the search for immortality was one of the reasons why the New World was discovered. They were looking for it, and they had heard that it was over here in Mesoamerica. It is Cortez's search for El Dorado, among other things. There were quite a few different missions sent over here seeking the so-called Fountain of Youth. And the Epic of Gilgamesh is the story of Gilgamesh's search for immortality. Uh, Alexander the Great, his what he was basically is also very it went through a very similar type of thing. I mean, the story of Alexander the Great is his military campaigns were geared towards his search for immortality because he believed that he was a hybrid between a goddess and a normal human. Again, that kind of ties to the Anunnaki. For those that don't believe in aliens, again, sorry about your luck, but they've actually proven that they have an alien corpse down there in Mexico, and so the existence of aliens is no longer something that is in doubt. It's been empirically proven that aliens do exist. And it's I don't know. It's a weird mindset because it's like I've talked to people that'll tell you the whole entire hierarchy of angels, but I mean the instant you call them aliens, they revolt. But it's I mean, what's in a word? What are angels? They're creatures that from elsewhere. What's an alien? Something from elsewhere. So, I mean, I'm not exactly sure where the division between being able to see connect one and the other exists, other than that division that was created between the physical and metaphysical realm back in 400 BC. So, it seems to me like what we're looking at here is that once they were told that they could not go home, they started, and that they were going to have shorter lives than those of their those on their home planet. Then they started fighting with each other, and they started searching for the fountain of youth, the rumor of immortality. They started wanting to find a way to not die, and I think that's basically what is causing all these problems. There's obviously other players in the field. I mean, I hate to go into reptilians, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them right now because it's like I don't really know all that much about the reptilians yet, but I do know that it's like if people keep on running into them on both in the crossroads, which is the astral realm, and here, they seem to play. They just keep popping up. And it's like that makes it obvious that there's some type of reptilian race out there that is going up the ladder of consciousness just as we are. It's no big deal as long as they're not messing with us. We don't mess with them. We're all good. There's some kind of mixed stories about the reptilians, but I don't know enough to put a dog in that race. So all I can say is that there's enough reports of them that it's hard to say that they don't exist. As a matter of fact, I would say that definitely there's some type of reptilian race out there that's basically doing the same thing we're doing, which is climbing the ladder of consciousness. And now whether they've been suppressed like we have or not, that's who knows. The duality is an important thing in this realm. So there's never going to be any time so long as this realm exists that there's not going to be conflict. And that's because basically conflict is what produces motion, which is what produces this reality. Your Zen masters will say that it's like this realm, the material realm is motion. That's all it is. It's frequency. So basically, it's like we create our own reality around us, and we do that on a continuous basis, and the mechanism by which we do that is the power of the word. So again, you see how it ties all into basically your karma is what allows you to become incorruptible enough to be trusted with the power to make reality manifest. And the only way you can burn your karma or serve your karma out is if you quit producing, if you quit putting out that negative energy and learn how to put out the correct spirit and intent. And it's not that complicated, but it's not that easy. And that's really, it's getting harder and harder as the time goes by, because I mean, we used to be focused on this transition at one point in time, and stemming from 400 BC till now, everything's been geared towards pushing us away from that understanding. So, as a shaman, a scholar, a teacher, and a person that spends anytime I'm not working on the station, I am studying the higher sciences. You know, God forbid, I'd go out and do anything fun, but the closest to fun I get is the PR events, which are fun. But it's like I'm pretty focused on basically attaining a deeper understanding of the higher sciences, simply because that's it's just the point I am at myself. Um, I used to call myself a hedonist, and it's like, in a way I was, because I did live life for the experience. I still do, but it's not really hedonist, because I'm not seeking out pleasure only. Fact is, pleasure really isn't really so useful in the long run. In the grand scheme of things, a few moments of pleasure really doesn't help you grow spiritually so much as taking on something, a daunting challenge, and actually overcoming it. So we used to really be focused as a community together in helping everybody be prepared for that transition and reach that point of understanding where they could make that transition faster. And I mean, if every teacher that I've listened to that's reached that point where they're at peace and they're ready to move on has spoken of the amount of suffering that they had to go through to get to the point where they were ready to let go of it, all these distractions, and really get to the root of the situation. And there was a point in time where people used to deliberately subject themselves to a significant amount of suffering in order to shorten the number of times they had to come back to this realm. But you don't need to sit there and beat yourself with a whip in order to reach a higher level of understanding. Now, that's not to say you don't have to go through quite a bit of unpleasantness. As I've said before, the name of this show is Preceding Clarity, and that's based on one of the principles of spiritual growth that I taught last week, which was conflict precedes clarity. That means basically my goal as I begin to work more and more towards where I'm going with my art, which at the moment, budget constraints, for me as an artist, are kind of making it so I have to work with limited resources. But that's kind of that's the lot of artists more often than not. Unless they hit it big with the powers that be, and the powers that be are people in authority, and people in authority automatically hate me on sight. So not looking for much from that direction. So I'm figuring probably I'm gonna have to come up with the money out of my own pocket. Meanwhile, it's like I still I have a lot of stuff that I was able to save off those servers that I will be releasing soon, and I highly recommend listening to some of it, because it's different. It's like my understanding of sound is a direct result of my journeys and me being a shaman and taking people through some interesting experiences using music. And eventually I started working the video into it, but uh, that's gonna the next phase. Now that I'm using motion tech is I'm wanting to go into the EEG, and that's using your brainwave energy to control music. And that costs a little bit of money to get into and has kind of a learning curve to it. I haven't experimented with it yet, but I'm kind of dreading just how disciplined your mind would have to be in order to use it to control music. And that's one of the things I need is a little bit more of that discipline. So whereas I kind of cringe at the learning curve, I look forward to the challenge, and that's a perception shift that has been significant in my life, and I hope that I can help if I help other people possibly embrace is the fact that it's like there's nothing to fear from challenge. The unknown is not to be feared but to be embraced, because it allows a person a chance to develop that character that they will need in order to graduate this little rite of initiation we have to go through. And the one thing, I think the last thing I'll say tonight, because it's like I've been rattling on, and I really got to get back to um, working on the audio there, so I can rock you guys next week. But um, it's basically just a repeat of the principles that keep a person moving forward on the ladder of consciousness and allow that person to take the control of their karma, such as it is. Then again, this is not magic. It's just an understanding of the way energy flows, and there's types of energy, and there's types of flows that we don't quite understand yet, and we can't perceive. That's a given. Um, Quantum mechanics is definitely. I don't know if anybody understands quantum mechanics. I beat my head against that brick for a while now, and it's one that kind of it threw Einstein for a loop too. But I kind of understand it now, and I mean, according to quantum mechanics, basically reality is actually in a state of flux until such time as somebody perceives that reality and quantifies it or labels it, or basically. So if you tie that into the concept of the power of the word, which is spoken of definitely in the Bible, because that's basically the power of the word is what initiated this reality around us. That's how God created reality. So that gives you a level, a kind of an appreciation of that power, and we each have the spark of the divine in us. So and it's like if we all have the capacity to manifest reality, and in order to step into that, you have to again be mature enough to be able to deal with that responsibility. And I'm glad for that. It's like I definitely have an understanding and appreciation for the level of power that comes with understanding the word. And it actually speaks of it in the secret doctrine as well. Is it basically that's one of the teachings that they've worked very hard to preserve, is just how powerful the word is, the ability to focus your will and intent. So basically your logos and your intent would be all right, let's see. Logos would be never mind. Anyway, yeah. So you focus your will and intent, right? Your heart and your mind, and then you use the power of the word, or the issuing forth of frequency, the movement of energy to manifest that reality. And that's kind of what rituals are about. Rituals are a focus of will and intent, and then of course, they involve sound and frequency and spoken incantations in order to take that focused will and intent and form it, manifest it into reality using the power of the word. So it's like be careful what you say. That's one of the reasons why the Buddhists spend so much time and use Zen masters teaching you to listen more than speak and be mindful. Mindfulness, is because you have to be mindful of the energy you put out, because that energy comes back, and that basically that determines your karma. So as long as you're not building up new tally marks against you on your karma, then you can begin serving out the justice, I guess, the poetic justice of karma, and it's like, as I say, there's no divine judgment. It's not God it's not, pardon me, it's not the divinity that's going to judge you. You yourself are the one that decides as an initiate when you are ready to graduate from this plane of existence and move on. It's entirely up to each one of us. Once we reach that point, when we decide to reach out and take hold of that responsibility and move on. So it's not the divinity that's our judge. It's us ourselves that determine when and if, and I hate to say if, because it used to be when, but it's like, as far as we are these days, from a real understanding of what it takes to get out of here. It's like we're generally moving away from spiritual evolution rather than towards it, and that's a kind of that kind of ties into the as above so below concept, because if it's as above so below, then it's as below so above, and that means that this isn't the only realm where things are going a little bit haywire. And I'm not really going to go into what's going on the higher realms right now, because this is, I mean, there's really nothing we can do about it. It's one of the things that I found annoying about this secret doctrine is it's a 2,800-page book, and it's like I'm on page 100 and something, and it's still talking about, it's still talking about stuff that's so much higher on the ladder of evolution that it really doesn't have anything to do with what we're doing right here, right now. Um, and I mean, it's the lady had a great level of understanding. It's just she's just taking it farther than it really needs to go if you want people to understand what you're trying to say. I mean, there's a certain there's certain things I don't discuss that I understand, because it's not that people are profane. It's just that their level of understanding really doesn't need those burdens yet, because it would create more confusion than anything. And I think that's where this book kind of wears on me. It makes it hard reading, is because between the jargon and the incessant dwelling on things that are way beyond my control, and really don't concern me on this material realm. Like, basically, it just goes in too much into detail and using too many words that it's like I don't know, and it's like I can't remember, and so then I got to have a vocabulary list sitting right there, and it becomes very slow reading, which kind of interferes with the message. Then you got to go back and read it again. Kind of reminds me of reading, if anybody's tried to read Stephen Hawking's books. Man, that guy was a genius. I mean, I doubt he came back to this plane of existence again, because it's like all he had to do basically the entire time he lived was sit around and focus on himself, introspection. So yeah, he had a pretty good understanding of the nature of reality. Um, Man, I remember trying to read his books, and it's like it had to be dead silent, and it's like I'd have to read his stuff over like 2, 3, 4 times before it really started to assemble itself into something that made sense, right? And But that's that type of reading is often the type of stuff you get a lot out of if you got the stubbornness and determination to make your way through it. And I do highly recommend picking up a copy of the Secret Doctrine if you can. It is on the archive.org, as is the Grand Bible, which has the Sumerian and Mesopotamian histories in it. Um, as a matter of fact, the Grand Bible Project is one that I find I wholly endorse because I mean right now their fifth edition, which was put out last year, I believe, has 8,000 and some odd number of pages. It includes text. It includes ancient texts from basically every faith that we know of, and that's to me that's what I call a Bible because it's like it's the true understanding of the divinity often comes from seeking different viewpoints because it's we learn different ways and each different viewpoint fills in details that adds something to the full picture. Um, with that, it's 10:35. Next week, we're gonna sit down and we're gonna view some certain passages out of both the I'd say the Book of Enki and the Epic of Gilgamesh because there's two different threads that I'm gonna work towards on this, and that's basically our actual history because it's important that we know our heritage in order to basically break the conditioning that we've been taught, especially here in the United States and over there in your west, what is considered your western side of the world. Um, Basically what we're taught is a lot different, and that needs to be that needs to be replaced with the true knowledge. And our ancestors were very, very, very adamant about preserving knowledge, and they a lot of them have suffered for it. So it's only correct that knowledge, rather than be suppressed by those that would have us remain ignorant, that knowledge be provided. And that's why I'm here. you know, um, none of what I share with you guys is anything that I came up with on my own. I wish I was that tuned in, but you know, what I'm sharing with you guys is based upon my interpretation of what I have studied. So that means that BrooklynStation.com and King and Queen Radio, Brooklyn Station LLC, has no opinion on the subject matter at hand. That what I've been speaking of is purely my own opinion and my own perceptions based on my own studies. We do, of course, endorse, that everybody learn to get along and relate to each other because we're all here together. We're all part of the same species, and we're all facing some challenges coming up in the future. But we have no opinion on politics. We have no official opinion on these social conditions other than, a strong desire to see our communities grow and prosper. And some of the PR events, which I'm going to put a list of the various PR events that I will be attending in the newsletter here. And the purpose of those PR events is both to bring in some clientele and also to start building up, to start working with the community more because, the manager, the owner, she's not quite able to get out quite as much as she used to, unfortunately, and that places that responsibility upon me. So keep an eye out for me. I'm gonna be showing up, and you won't be able to miss me because I like to talk to everybody, and it's like. I'm very friendly, and if you recognize me and see me and come up, you will get a free T-shirt. So, We'll be doing some other contests and stuff here pretty quick. Let me get the newsletter, social media, and the remote stuff all set up so so it doesn't have any issues, and then we'll start doing some more contests and some more stuff to involve you, the listener. Look forward to that. It's like I'm just starting to stretch my wings now, and I have a pretty good vision of where I'd like to see the station go, I believe that you, the listener, will find it quite interesting as well. So don't forget, if you want to listen to some good world and Afro-Cuban multicultural music, tune in to kingandqueenradio.com. BrooklynStation.com. If you want your own show, get a hold of us. Again, that's my number is 929-694-8741. Again, that's 929-694-8741. Or you can call Zina Palin at 718-253-7273. Again, 718-253-7273. And the newsletter will go out tomorrow. We got quite a few people on that mailing list now, so that'll have our contact information as well. Try to think what else we got going on. There's probably a lot I'm forgetting, but that's all. That's all the important stuff now. So once again, this is Shay Bernhardt, the manager at Brooklyn Station LLC, kingandqueenradio.com, brooklynstation.com. Keep an eye out for us at the Pride Parade. We'll be there if you would like to be on our float, or you would like to help sponsor, as we are paying for the float out of our own pocket, because we like to be involved. And certainly, personally, I believe if you can find love in this world, you're doing pretty good. And we definitely support the community. With that, I will leave you all. I wish I could have the music this time, but it's like it got to the point where I was like, you know what? Rather than do anything that isn't going to work right, I'll just talk, because I know the material by heart pretty much. And next week we'll have that particular thing ironed out. So basically, for all intents and purposes now, we do have remote capacity, so we can stream you from the comfort of your own home. All you need is basically some free multi-platform software that is good for Windows, Mac, and Linux, and a webcam. So if you would like to have your own show with a pre-established audience, our prices are pretty cheap, because we like to fill up some airspace. And we can even, if you want your own channel, we can even do that now. So again, you'll see that in the newsletter, and we'll be posting some links on the website and stuff for that. Other than that, I'm gonna go back to pounding my head against the brick of the techno circle jerk that anybody that deals with technology these days is quite familiar with, and probably about as sick of as I am of it. But that's the way it goes these days. Technology is just everybody has their proprietary stuff, and nobody likes to play nice together, and it's kind of aggravating, to say the least. But such is the lot of life these days, especially if you're dealing with technology. Just fortunately, I like a challenge, and I highly encourage everybody, when you see a challenge, instead of looking at it as something discouraging or to be feared, embrace it as an opportunity to learn and grow. And that's a hard perception shift. I find myself having to push myself to see things like that sometimes, but it makes it a lot easier. And again, you move towards and become like that which you think about, folks. So be careful what you focus on. As a matter of fact, I would highly recommend, for those of you listening, take for the next 7 days and just pay attention to where your mind takes you when you aren't paying attention, and you'll see what I'm saying. Because A lot of times, if I'm not careful and I don't discipline myself, I'll find myself thinking about things that have like absolutely no relevance to anything that could ever possibly be in the realm of happening. Uh, a good example is reliving the past, and trying to think of what you could have done differently. It's like kind of a useless waste of energy, right? Because the past happened, you did what you did, and it's like as long as I'm focused on what I could have done differently, then I'm robbing myself of what I did and the lessons inherent in what I did. That applies whether what I did was it produced the results I was looking for, or if my actions produced results that I was not looking for. Because as I've taught in a previous episode, there's no such thing as failure. There's only results. And as long as I can take those results and see where my decisions produce those results, then I can turn any experience into something that I can gain from. And that's basically a mindset that I picked up from some people that were much wiser than I. Again, nothing I teach is something I came up with. It's merely my interpretation of what was taught to me by people much wiser than I am. And I'm grateful for all of those people. Some of them are still here. Steve, I'm looking in your direction. And some of them have moved on, like the man who gave me the love of reading. He has moved on, and he's probably done on this particular realm. But I'll see him again and be able to thank him. And that's one of the things that I like about the level of understanding I've reached, is where I know I get to see my mama again, and I know this beyond. It's not something that I believe but don't believe. It's something that I know within the deepest marrow of my bones, that it's like my mama moved on from this realm, but she's still out there. She may have come back, and she may be out there right now wandering around. I don't know. If she made it, then I'll see her again. If she had to come back, then, it's like when she does make it, I'll see her again. But, someday I'm going to be able to look at my mama and thank her for, the parts of her that I used to think I hated before she passed on. And I'll leave you with one other thought. And that's one of the things I've noticed over the years, is that it's like when somebody passes on, it's the things that annoyed me the most about them when they were alive that I miss the most when they're gone, because that was those some of those peculiar, annoying little quirks about the people was what made them them. So, it's like when you're thinking about your loved one and something about them that annoys you, just remember that, when they're gone, that very thing that you're complaining about is what you're going to miss the most about them. With that, I will leave y'all. Thank you. You've been listening to brooklynstation.com. Don't forget to check kingandqueenradio.com and our websites. And if you would like to talk to Sister Dobong, that's 718-253-7273. And if you would like to be on the show, have a show or have a channel or do a DJ or have your music played on our radio station, that's 718-253-7273 for Zina Palin, or 929-694-8741 for me. Other than that, y'all have a nice week. I will see you next week, and next week we will be doing that. I think next week I'm going to shoot for that being the last live one I do, and from then on doing pre-recorded so that I can focus a little bit less on technical difficulties that arise as you're doing a live production, and focus more on getting across the message in the manner I want to communicate it. So, yeah, as I say, tomorrow we will have some older episodes up as for people to go back and watch on video on demand, and there will be the older Sister Dobongs there, including the one with Queen Makuta. I know we had a listener that was requesting the copy of that, and I will apologize to her. That will be, I will give her a copy, send her a copy of that tomorrow. Basically, and other than that, y'all, I will see you next week. Just don't go out there and do anything that I would do because they frown upon that kind of behavior. Trust me, I know.